Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, but back to continue my read along for the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound, written by Patrick McCrae. By the way, I'm still on chapter 1, but this is part 3, so sorry for the delay too. Episode 406. Can Angelique cure Barnabas of the curse before he escapes to Josette and rises again? Angelique, Laura Parker. After cursing Barnabas, Angelique immediately regrets her choice and tries to cure him, despite his desire to flee to Josette. Meanwhile, Josette's neck bleeds exactly where Barnabas's own bite wounds are. Angelique tries to restrain Barnabas, explaining to Ben that if he rises, he'll become one of the living dead. The threat of indentured servitude didn't do much to dissuade Ben Stokes from murder, but at the time, he didn't know he'd also have to referee for Barnabas and Angelique through serving as marriage counselor by default. Yeah, he comes across as the real hero of the episode. And weirdly, so does the witch herself. There is a nuance in Dark Shadow's story that gets lost, and it's in 406. Angelique truly wants to undo her curse. Is it selfish? Well, in the words of Mother Teresa, isn't everything? Your Honor, in defense of Angelique Collins, I submit that she had been shot at the time said curse was laid. Who among us does not have fairly strong feelings about a musket ball burning a hole through his chest and ruining his best negligee? She didn't know she'd wake up and still be married to him. If she had known, she would have cursed him with the scent of bay rum into a like her friends, no matter how late they stay over watching reruns of The Real Housewives of Logansport. Yeah, while drinking his Drambu without replacing it. But she didn't know. And that's why he's become a vampire. Or sorry, becoming a vampire. Nothing on the show is as simple as it would seem, nor is it easy. Angelique continues to haunt Barnabas with the kind of searing hatred that can only be attributed to true love. I continue to wonder about her inability to remove the curse in 1796, but then kind of be able to in 1897, and totally be able to in 1840. My guess is that her powers increase and diminish depending on her standing with Diablos and how much energy it takes her to travel. The Angelique that curses Barnabas without so much as a Samantha Stevens nose twitch has the benefit of being on Diablos' good side over 45 years of wandering the countryside, generally doing evil and staying out of church. Those batteries are full, as is the case for any magic user who hangs around Michael Stroka for long. Yeah, but when later, but when we meet her, the temporal journey has taken a lot out of her, and she has no interest in mercy. In that timeline, she skipped 1840 without Barnabas's return. Warren Odison speculated on Angelique's timeline in a fantastic essay in the 1840 Concordance. In it, to my memory, he posts that Angelique's timeline goes 1795, 1840, 1968, 1897, and finally 1970. This means that the 1840 Angelique is probably the most powerful version, not as experienced, but not as ravaged by time travel, stints in hell, and diabolic deals for parole. As their history continues, Barnabas only tries to kill her occasionally, kind of like an incredibly patient parent who nevertheless has a breaking point. For the most part, he puts up with her rather successfully, when we know full well she's only one tiki torch away from being a stain on the road. Her insistence on curing him in this episode, to the extent of trying to keep him from packing and leaving, must have influenced his indulgence despite his statements to the contrary. I feel for Angelique. We've all had moments of overreaction followed by the inability to retract it. What follows for the series is not only continued anger at Barnabas, but anger at herself as well. His survival is a constant reminder of her wrath, and the memory of her wrath is the memory of its inspiration. He won't love her, but he also won't have the decency to die and stop reminding her of the curse. Of course, she is the curse's ultimate victim, and perhaps that is as much a motivation for the cure as anything. Say what you will, but she loves him. This episode hit the airwaves January 15th, 1969. Episode 427. As Victoria's trial begins, will Peter turn the tables on Trask by placing him on the witness stand? Trask, Jerry Lacey. As the trial begins, Victoria learns that her allies in the Collins family will be of no help. When it seems as if Vicky was in two places at once, Trask's victory seems assured. Upon investigation, Peter suspects that Ben knows more than he is saying. Jerry Lacey further establishes himself as an instant star on the show, giving us a far more strategic Trask than we've seen of the ranting loon thus far. But there is an even more dramatic element to 427. Lighting the star of 427 is lighting. The show had used gobos off and on from the beginning to project, yes, dark shadows on the actors in the courtroom. They cast a wounded widow's Mullins over the witness stand, casting Victoria in a perfect spider's web. Unsubtle, absolutely, but if you're looking for subtle, this isn't the show for you. TV's first fictional witch trial began on this day, and Sam Hall and crew are to be championed for rationalizing how that could possibly happen in 1795. The sluggish pace of the soap opera is often a whipping boy here at the Daybook, but this is an object lesson in the medium's greatest strength. Thanks to the gift of time, storylines can be cleared up and the ridiculous becomes the norm. Not only does this allow them to credibly insinuate the incredible plot elements into a comparably normal world, it makes the show resemble real life, where exactly the same thing happens, except not with witches and vampires. Okay, not with vampires. The second payoff is for longtime viewers as the show progresses, so does the pace. Parallel time notwithstanding, by the time late 1968 rolls around, we accept the rules of Collingwood, and the storytelling picks up to match our familiarity with the bizarre, which has become the norm. 1840 may seem rambunctious for some, but for others who prize the chance to watch every day, it is laudably rich with daily turnabouts and surprises. In some ways, the storyline takes even more time, although what has preceded it is so barbecue that it works even more. In 1795, it took them only 3 months to get to the climactic witch trial in 1840. They wouldn't reach it until the 4th on this day in 1968. Arthur Miller's Tony-nominated play, The Price, opened on Broadway. Like all plays by Miller, it was a searing indictment of Price's Miller loved a good searing indictment. This episode hit the airwaves February 13th, 1968. This is one of those essays where I had to skirt around condemning organized religion because the show skirts around condemning organized religion successfully. They could have gone further by showcasing a good member of the clergy, but that would have been pandering, and they were too tasteful for that. It was a rare case of a risky program having it both ways. Episode 437. Victoria takes the stand for the final showdown with Trask, but will she be any match for the Reverend's secret weapon, Nathan Forbes, Joel Carruthers? Trask extorts Forbes into testifying that Vicky bewitched him, a choice both would later regret. Afterward, Victoria gives her final testimony, where she reveals her origin, the origin of the book, and the fact that she traveled back via seance hearing this. The court sentences her to hang. The trial of the century, or at least the ratings of the 1968 period, come to an end. Trask plays suspiciously dirty for someone who has God on his side. Blackmailing Forbes, is that necessary? Of course, he doesn't know that Vicky is going to do something crazy, like tell the truth under oath. Victoria and Trask transcend realism and maybe humanity to become walking, talking metaphors. And in this sense, Dark Shadows absolves religion of evil. Religion's not the problem. If Trask and Vicky evolve into polar opposites, what is the thing that separates them? On one level, Trask lies and Victoria tells the truth, of course. She does. She's a teacher. Why does Trask do what he does? This is the most fascinating incarnation of the Reverend. All are impulsive bigots, but the Reverend T is the most ideologically motivated. He is there to impose the truth. He knows Victoria is there to report the truth. She discovers close up if 1795 is about something, it's a study in jealousy. Take a few steps back and look at it in the context of the series. And it's about truth. Barnabas refuses to acknowledge his true feelings. His mind is made up. Trask refuses to concede that the Enlightenment has transformed humanity's interpretation of God. Vicky, the hapless and professional victim that she is, stands as both an ambassador of the modern world and a counterpoint to the 1795 fad of woeful ignorance. She is honest to a fault, even if it means confessing a story so lurid and fantastic that it will guarantee the noose. Vicky is compelled to tell the truth, although she could win without it, as much as Trask is compelled to twist the facts, although he could win without it. It's compulsion that is driven by the need to make a point, more than human realism. But this is why the era defined by Chayefsky and Sterling, these writers didn't have time for realism. Reality just got in the way of the truth. Blood and Thunder rule the actors today, with Davis, Mulkey, and Lacey in the cutthroat race for daytime Emmys. But what choice have they? The stakes are enormously for all, and the consequences shattering in between the loud noises is Joel Carruthers. As an actor, Carruthers is somewhere between Gregory Peck and Major Q. Betrothed from the Bond movies, no matter what he has done before, he always invents new ways to command the stage with quietly forced, intense humanity. In moments of almost no dialogue, we see Forbes grow and say more than other actors do with hundreds of lines. Any rewatch of the series reveals new heroes, but few champion the integrity of the storytelling, as does Joel Carruthers. On this day in 1968, we say goodbye to Howard Florey, the man who won a 1945 Nobel Prize for purifying penicillin. This episode hit the airwaves February 27th, 1968. Episode 450. In 1795, there is one force that can stop Angelique, and it just arrived at Collinwood. Baphomet's Anita Bolster? Baphomet's arrives to determine the nature of the curse and its solution. Meanwhile, Joshua deals with a mad Millicent, and Barnabas is drawn back to the tower room. There, Mapes begins a battle with the force cursing Barnabas. When we first learn about the supernatural as kids, it is the quintessence of the mysteries. We've spent a year of awareness learning the rules, and here is a system of action that breaks them. To what is it connected? What possibly explains it? When I first saw Dark Shadows, I was in quite awe of the vast mythology that explained how the house got this way. I was in equal awe of the cosmology that empowered those forces. Could it ever be explained? Of course not. And when you're a kid and everything is inexplicable, like magnets or the electoral, this makes about as much sense as anything else. Then the paranormal all loses its sense of wonder because we pretend to understand it to death. It's become like religion, systems of reincarnation, or D&D. We'll either discover or make up all manner of elaborate insert tab into slot B instruction manuals for how a paranormal universe works. This crystal curses this. This orc can be killed only by that. This star cluster absolutely means you're gluten intolerant, and so on. It's just as true for monster media. Vampires have about as much written about them as do dogs and cats. Do in the name of celebration are sources of wonder. We accidentally kill them with comprehension. Dark Shadows, perhaps due to hurried writing for a medium that no one's going to see again, defies that. Yes, there's a lot to understand and bicker about and make charts and graphs over. I do it a lot myself, but at its best, the show is about the opposite. It makes all of us Victoria winners out of confident Joe's Joshua's. We make fun of Vicky for not understanding, but that's the point. She's never meant to genuinely understand what's going on. We are never meant to understand what's going on. Our job is not to understand what's going on. It's to connect through the experience of not being able to do so. Baphomet Mapes reminds us of that. Just when the show is at the outer end of strange and Barnabas is summoning the voices of ghosts, and Joshua has lost all control of the Newtonian harness of casualty. The show's up. The lighting is suddenly a dark and textured expression of the new dimension of Joshua's world. The plunging us into a Rembrandt painting. The dialogue has a sudden and Marlovian urgency and poetry. On a show accustomed to talking around problems, im- implicating it with extreme prejudice. This episode speaks to the very heart of them, and yet only one person knows what's going on. A strange and confident sorcerer, precursor to Elias in Insidious, in a show where the supernatural frequently bullies the Collinses around. It takes a formidable person to give it what for. Even Stokes would concede that there are none like Betha, looking and acting for all the world like the EC Crypt Keeper prior to death. She gives DS mythology new depth and familiar resonance by again treating a curse is a curse. On most of the show, the curse is considered the casual agent for the real problem, vampirism, and the only cure is a stake to the heart. Mapes treats the curse as the ongoing crisis itself. She warns the Countess against being loved by him. And suddenly, we get why Julia survives for as long as she does. Mask drop with thunderous noise. In no other timeline do we go from sacred denial to profane truth. As in 1795, where the Enlightenment smolders down to a muted hell over 4.5 months as the characters go mad from the truth, and Barnabas roars with the voice of Angelique. We finally get one character who knows what's going on. It is the great testament to Angelique's awesome ability that she doesn't last long, but it's jewel box epic of a battle. These episodes won't be matched for sheer pain until we learn of Quentin's son's death or the eventual death of Angelique. And even then, I'm not sure that this is a sustainable quality that the show can ever reveal again. Revival, I should say. This episode hit the airwaves March 15th, 1968.